My younger brother, Caleb, sent the message late Friday night. Don't come to tomorrow's barbecue. Vanessa has invited some important country club friends, and she doesn't want the place smelling like garbage. For a few seconds, I simply stared at the family group chat. Then my parents, Daniel and Patricia, reacted with laughing emojis. I was sitting in my Atlanta penthouse when I read it, overlooking the city lights through floor-to-ceiling windows. The insult should have hurt. Instead, it made something inside me go completely still. I typed one word: understood. They thought they knew me. To them, I was the daughter who worked with garbage trucks, recycling facilities, and commercial waste contracts. My family had never once asked what my job actually involved. They had never visited my office, met my employees, or looked at the numbers behind my company. If they had, they would have discovered that I wasn't collecting trash. I owned Meridian Environmental Logistics. The company employed hundreds of people across several states and managed contracts worth millions of dollars. I had built it from a tiny recycling operation into a regional logistics company through 15 years of exhausting work. But my family still reduced me to the trash girl. What they also didn't know was that I had quietly been helping them for years. 4 years earlier, Dad had lost his job. Their mortgage payments were becoming impossible, and I couldn't stand watching them struggle. Without telling them, I created a family trust that sent $6,000 toward their mortgage every month. They believed an old investment account was somehow producing the money. I never corrected them. I thought helping my parents without expecting praise was simply what family did. That night, however, something changed. I opened my banking portal. The recurring transfer was scheduled for Monday morning. I stared at it for several seconds. Then I clicked cancel. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I was done. The next morning, Caleb and Vanessa arrived at Meridian's headquarters. They didn't come to apologize. They came because they needed something. Caleb owned 2 fashionable restaurants that had once been the pride of our family. Now, both were drowning under nearly $3 million in debt. What Caleb didn't know was that Meridian had recently purchased the distressed loan portfolio from his lender. He and Vanessa entered the executive elevator laughing. "Imagine her cleaning this building," Vanessa joked. When they reached my floor, they walked into my office without knocking. Caleb stopped when he saw me sitting behind the glass desk. His smile disappeared. "Wait," he whispered. "You work here?" I leaned back in my chair. "I don't work here, Caleb." I looked directly at him. "I own it." Caleb stared at me as if I had suddenly become a stranger. Vanessa recovered first. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You expect us to believe you own this entire company?" I turned my laptop toward them. "Believe whatever you want." The screen showed Meridian's ownership records, financial statements, and executive filings. My name appeared everywhere. Caleb's face tightened. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I almost laughed. "You never asked." He looked away. Then I opened another file. "Now let's discuss why you're here." Caleb's restaurants were collapsing. They had missed rent payments, supplier invoices, taxes, payroll obligations, and loan installments. The debt had grown to nearly $3 million, but the financial problems were only part of it. My auditors had discovered that company money had been used to pay for Vanessa's luxury vehicle, expensive clothing, private club membership, vacations, and personal expenses. Caleb became defensive. That's normal business spending. No, I replied, it isn't. I placed the audit report on the desk. You can argue with me, but you can't argue with these records. Vanessa folded her arms. So what? You're going to destroy your own brother? No. I pushed a second document toward Caleb. I'm giving you a way out. Meridian would take control of the restaurant group, restructure the debt, protect the employees, pay legitimate creditors, and keep the businesses operating. In exchange, Caleb would transfer ownership of the restaurants to Meridian. He stared at the agreement. You'd really do that? I'll stabilize the businesses, I said. But I won't cover up financial misconduct. After several tense minutes, Caleb signed. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The following afternoon, my parents stormed into my office. Patricia was furious. You embarrassed your brother. Dad pointed at me. You're his sister. You should help him, not steal his businesses. I calmly explained that Caleb had voluntarily signed the transfer agreement. Then I showed them something else, a loan document. Dad's expression changed immediately. This loan was secured using your house, I said. He grabbed the document. His hands began shaking. I never signed this. I know. The signature claiming Dad had approved the collateral was forged. Their home had been pledged as security for emergency financing Caleb had obtained. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Caleb began crying. I was desperate, he whispered. I didn't know what else to do. Dad turned toward him. You used our house? Caleb immediately changed his story. He claimed I was exaggerating everything because he had embarrassed me at the barbecue. Within hours, relatives were calling me selfish, jealous, unstable, and cruel. They said I was trying to make my own parents homeless. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I called Meridian's technology department. Preserve every access log connected to Caleb's former company, I ordered. Every login, every download, every email, every transfer. I had no idea yet how important that decision would become. 2 days later, my security team sent me an alert. Caleb had accessed the old company system, using credentials that should no longer have worked. And he wasn't looking at harmless information. He was downloading vendor contracts, customer records, and valuable liquor license documents. Someone was preparing to sell something, and I was about to discover exactly who. I read the security report twice. Caleb had accessed Meridian's systems using old credentials and downloaded files belonging to businesses he no longer controlled. My security director asked the obvious question, "Do you want us to shut him out?" I shook my head. Not yet. He looked surprised. Why? Because right now, he's giving us evidence. Every login was being recorded. Every file he opened was being preserved. Every message connected to the activity was being copied into a secure evidence archive. I didn't need to confront Caleb. I needed to know what he planned to do next. The answer arrived the following morning. Caleb had contacted an investment group in Nevada. He claimed he still controlled several restaurant assets and offered to sell valuable contracts and licensing rights for $800,000. The money would be deposited into a private account controlled by Caleb and Vanessa. There was just one problem. He no longer owned those assets. Meridian did. My attorneys reviewed everything carefully. They preserved the emails, access logs, contracts, account information, and communications with the prospective buyer. Then Caleb transferred the files across state lines. The money arrived in his hidden account shortly afterward. At that point, I stopped waiting. My attorneys contacted the appropriate authorities and provided the evidence. I didn't know exactly what would happen next, but I knew I had finally stopped protecting my brother from consequences. By Friday afternoon, I decided to attend the barbecue after all. I arrived at my parents' house with my attorney beside me. The backyard was filled with guests. Caleb and Vanessa were there. When Vanessa saw me, she laughed. Well, look who came anyway. Several people turned toward us. The trash collector couldn't stay away, she announced. A few guests chuckled. I didn't react. I walked to the outdoor counter and placed a folder on the table. Then another. Then another. The laughter slowly disappeared. Inside were Caleb's signed ownership agreement, server access records, emails, financial documents, and the wire transfer evidence. I looked at my parents. Caleb transferred ownership of the restaurants to Meridian. After signing that agreement, he continued accessing systems he no longer had permission to use. Caleb stepped forward. Don't listen to her. I placed the forged loan document beside the other evidence. This document used your house as collateral. Dad picked it up. His face went pale. You told me you never borrowed money against the house, he said. Caleb's voice cracked. I was going to fix everything. You forged my signature, Dad whispered. I had no choice. You always have a choice, I replied. Vanessa suddenly insisted she knew nothing about the money. My attorney placed the bank records on the table. The receiving account, he said calmly, is jointly controlled by Caleb and Vanessa. Nobody spoke. Then, from beyond the hedges, came the sound of sirens. Caleb looked toward the driveway. 2 vehicles entered the property. Federal agents stepped out. For the first time, the confident expression on Caleb's face completely vanished. He turned and ran. He made it only a few steps before an agent stopped him near the fence. Vanessa froze. An investigator approached her with documents showing her connection to the account that received the money. Guests began quietly leaving. My mother grabbed my arm. Please, she whispered. You have to help your brother. Dad looked at me. Whatever this costs, we'll pay you back. I slowly pulled my arm away. For years, I said. You protected Caleb from every consequence. My voice remained calm, and every time I was expected to clean up afterward. This time, I wouldn't. My mother stared at me with tears in her eyes. You're really going to let them take him? I looked toward the driveway. Caleb was being questioned by federal agents. Vanessa stood nearby, pale and silent. For once, I didn't feel responsible for fixing the disaster. I didn't create this, I said quietly. Caleb did. Dad lowered his head. You're still his sister. And I was his sister when I paid your mortgage for 4 years, I replied. Both of them froze. What are you talking about? Mom whispered. I explained the trust. Every month, $6,000 had been transferred toward their mortgage. The money had come from me. They had never known. Dad looked stunned. You did that? Yes. Mom began crying harder. But why would you stop? I thought about the barbecue message, the laughing emojis, the years of being treated as less important than Caleb. Because I finally understood that helping you wasn't making you appreciate me. I said, it was teaching everyone that I would always rescue them. That evening, I officially notified them that the mortgage assistance was ending. There was no revenge in it. Just a boundary. Their attorneys later negotiated the transition, and my parents moved into a modest apartment they could actually afford. Caleb's legal problems continued. Months passed. Meridian kept the viable restaurant locations and rebuilt them under responsible management. Employees were paid on time. Vendors received what they were owed. The businesses slowly became profitable again. 6 months later, Caleb was still facing the consequences of his financial crimes. Vanessa had filed for divorce. My parents rarely contacted me. Then one evening, I received a voicemail from my mother. Her voice sounded tired. "We should put all of this behind us," she said. "We're still family." I listened to the message twice. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what they had done, no recognition of how many times they had chosen Caleb over me. Just another request for me to forget. I deleted the voicemail. For years, I had believed success would finally earn my family's respect. I thought if I built something impressive enough, earned enough money, and helped them enough, they would eventually see my value. I was wrong. My company had given me financial freedom, but money wasn't what finally changed my life. Boundaries did. That night, I went to dinner with a few close friends. They knew what I did. They knew how hard I had worked, and they never made me feel ashamed of my success. Nobody called me the trash girl. Nobody laughed when I walked into the room. Nobody expected me to apologize for becoming successful. As I sat there, listening to everyone laugh, I realized something important. Family isn't always determined by blood. Sometimes the people who truly love you are the ones who celebrate your growth instead of resenting it. For years, I had mistaken generosity for love. I had believed that constantly rescuing people proved how much I cared. Instead, it had allowed them to hurt me without consequences. That barbecue had been meant to humiliate me. Instead, it became the moment I finally stopped begging my family to value me. I didn't destroy their lives. I simply stopped sacrificing mine to protect theirs. Successes gave me choices. Boundaries gave me strength. And walking away gave me peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove who I was. I already knew, and that was enough.